Creating a social media strategy is something that's tricky for so many of you, and I know this, I hear it all the time. And today we have a hot seat with Kellye Dash, and that's what we're talking about. We're talking about her struggle with making sure that her social media is in alignment, from her podcast to her business, and how she can use them to attract customers in her local Tampa Bay area. I'm really excited about this podcast episode. It was super fun to record, and I think you're going to hear a lot of things that she's saying, mostly about not being enough, not getting enough done. And she's doing a lot, you guys. So take a listen, and hopefully you get some good ideas on how you can implement some social media strategy in your business and refine your messaging. Before we get into it, I want to tell you a little bit about Kellye. So Kellye Dash is a technology solutions professional who began her IT career with Nextel Communications in 1999. And having worked in multiple customer-facing roles, she has held various technology service positions for the last 20 years. She is a two-time entrepreneur, starting her first business, The Busybuddy, a virtual assistant business, which she successfully operated from 2009 to 2015, serving entrepreneurs and small business owners. Today, Kellye is the founder of a technology services firm called Hawk Business Group, which consults with small businesses to provide them with the necessary IT solutions and services to best operate their businesses. She has written dozens of posts and articles on LinkedIn sharing small business insight and information. And each month, Kellye also distributes a monthly newsletter with tips and resources for entrepreneurs and small businesses. She also has a weekly small business podcast called The Business Blend to share her experiences on her small business journey. Kellye is an advocate for girls and the empowerment of women, especially those in technology. And when she's not working on her business, she enjoys spending time with her family, stopping to pet every pug she meets, and planning for her bucket list trip to Bora Bora. I mean, wouldn't we all love to go to Bora Bora? Kellye really bears it all in this episode and is very open about her struggles with social media, with content creation, with all of that. And so I thank her in advance for her authenticity and openness here. So I'm really excited to get into this episode and for you guys to hear Kellye's experience with social media and how we can help her create a more solidified strategy. But before we get into it, this episode is brought to you by the Website Laboratory. Y'all, doors are closing tomorrow, October 2nd. So if you're interested in learning how to generate traffic to your website that's ready to buy, this membership is the right thing for you. We have a year-long program that's $39 a month or $390 a year that teaches you strategies for refining the way that you use your digital marketing to drive traffic to your website in order to get people that are ready to buy. Because if your website's not your 24/7, 365 sales machine, then we need to tweak a few things. So I hope you'll take a look at what it all entails at thefirstclick.net/laboratory and see if it might be a good fit for you. And again, doors close tomorrow, so time is of the essence. Take a look, see what you think, and hit me up if you have any questions because I would love to answer them for you. Let's get into this episode. You're listening to the Digital Marketing Therapy Podcast. I'm your host, Sammy Bedell-Mulhern, and each week I bring you tips from myself and other experts, as well as hot seats with small business owners and entrepreneurs to demystify digital marketing and get you on your way to generating more leads and growing your business. Well, I'm excited to have Kellye here. Kellye, welcome to the podcast.
Oh my gosh, Sammy, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you're so welcome. These are some of my favorite episodes to do with small business owners and helping you guys troubleshoot somewhere where you're stuck. So these are my favorite. But why don't you kind of let people know a little bit about, where you're at right now? I know we're talking social media today and kind of where you're feeling stuck.
Yes, certainly. Thanks for the opportunity. So I have my own business. I have a technology services business where I connect small business owners to the technology vendors that they need to help them operate their business. And I also have a podcast. And the podcast is all about the small business journey, my own experiences being a small business owner and all the challenges and wins and struggles that go along with that. And then I invite guests on to tell their small business stories so that for my audience, they're able to learn and understand that they're not by themselves, or if they're wanting to create their own business, how they can do that. And it's not perfect, but it's your own. So I really wanted to use my social media to share that story and share the experiences and have a platform that people can kind of relate to. And I'm not sure if I'm doing it effectively. I have a website for my business, so I try to keep them separated. So I have my business, and that has the website. I have a Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn business page.
Okay, and then you have your podcast has a website or no?
My podcast, no, it feeds off of my business page.
Okay.
It has its own page on my website, yes. But then my podcast does have its own Facebook and Instagram.
And then do you do show notes on your website then for your podcast?
So it just has a link to Libsyn that says, here are the topics of each of the shows I have out, but there's no summary. No.
Okay.
Uh-oh.
No, that's okay. It's totally okay. I am a proponent of do what you can, and you're getting content out there on a regular basis. So that's a great first step.
Okay.
Eventually, do you have a blog on your website though?
Yes. And based upon, I know we've spoken before, and even since our last conversation, I had it hidden on my website. So it's now visible.
But are you contributing to it regularly, or is the content you're creating your podcast?
It is original content, and it's once a month. I've just reactivated it, so it's I've got to go back and kind of check it. My goal is once a month. I know that I should probably do more than that, but baby steps.
Well, I would maybe, and this is kind of off topic of social media, but I would maybe consider, instead of trying to do all the things, maybe just keep your blog up so that people can see it for, like you said, content that has been there that still might be relevant and important. But maybe think about doing show notes on your podcast instead, since you're already creating that content. Then you can have something that goes up weekly.
Oh, and since my podcast shows weekly, okay.
So just a thought.
I love it.
So when we talk about social media, you said your podcast has a Facebook and an Instagram.
Yes.
And then your business has a Facebook, Instagram, and a LinkedIn.
Yes.
Okay. And then where you're feeling stuck is, just to make sure I understand this, is where to connect the two, where not to connect the two, and how to leverage them all to support. Ultimately, the ultimate driver is to get customers into your business, correct?
That's right. Because I feel like I'm one directional, and on all those platforms. So having it blend together in the most appropriate strategic way, bring me business. Yes.
Okay. So, who is your ideal customer? Let's start there. Like, who would you love to work with if you could work with that person all day, every day?
So I live in the Tampa Bay area. So my target audience are the super small businesses that maybe 10 on average employees that need someone to kind of take over their IT coordination efforts because they're small and they don't have someone that they can dedicate to handle the technology, and they can't fully have someone manage that. I want to be that liaison to provide that service to them where, hey, we're moving to a new office, or we're expanding and we need new internet. I don't know what kind of internet we need. I don't know Wi-Fi. Where did the drops go? And those types of things, having those conversations, because I have those relationships with vendors. So I can say, okay, what are you looking to do? And go find those resources that can do that for you. And
you work specifically in the Tampa Bay area, not necessarily, you don't take clients outside of that area?
I do not. No, I do not at this point. No.
Okay.
I'm basically in Tampa Bay, vicinity.
Okay, perfect. So, here's the first thing that I typically like to do when I'm starting out with a new client, if we're doing their social media, there's two steps. One is really outlining where you want to play, which it seems like you've done. And then the second piece is kind of creating the core categories. I mean, you hear a lot of people talk about this, right? The core categories that you want to talk about, because some people are more comfortable being more personal, face forward. Some people aren't. Sometimes like I will share images of my kids once in a while. Sometimes I don't. It just depends on what it is. It always ties back to my business, but it's really important for you to kind of think about what are the pieces of your business that you want to talk about, and what are the pieces about you personally that you think are going to resonate with your potential customers that you want to share. So, because it seems like with your podcast and the empowering stories and, helping people at the early stages of their business, I would think, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you might be a little bit more comfortable being more face forward in your business publicly.
Yes.
Yeah, which is great. I love that, because we know that people like to buy from people they feel connected to.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
that's not how I started initially either. And when I first started, I was just all about business and sharing just quotes or tips and not showing my face and not showing someone that the person behind the business. But I look at people and I look at their businesses and I like seeing that person behind. So I said, I need to do that. So I started doing that. But again, I don't know if I'm doing it the right way, the smart way.
Well, right. So especially in IT, I think people get very intimidated by the person who's going to come in and set up all their stuff and think they can't speak the language. They're not going to understand. They're not going to know what to ask. Right. So to me, I see some huge opportunities in letting people see your personality and B, dumbing down the language. I'm not saying you don't already, but really keeping it simple and using kind of terms that everyday people would use, not necessarily people in the IT world, right? And sharing kind of the tips that you were sharing before, sharing those for people that are not understanding, like you don't know what you don't know, right? So I love to share tips like that are very basic, things that seem really foundational to me, like things I don't even think about anymore in my business, but that still is where my audience is, right? So when I share those tips, it's I get a lot of comments and feedback because people are like, oh, I didn't even think about that, or I didn't know that was something I should be doing. So you have a lot of opportunity to pull in that kind of content. So what I like to do is really line out, okay, these are the 5 or 6 categories that I'm going to talk about. And then that helps because you can just kind of plug it into a calendar. And then you're not thinking about, okay, what should I post? You're thinking, okay, I need to come up with 4 tips this month. And then I'm going to plug those in. I need to come up with 4 personal stories this month. Does that make sense?
Yes. And as you're saying that, I realize now, looking back at even on my Instagram, that's where I'm most active. I do less tips than anything else. So that's shame on me.
Oh, no, it's not a shame on it. Here's the thing. Everybody's going to be different. And even within these categories, you're still going to have to test and see kind of what works and what doesn't with your audience. So it's all a learning experience. We're always constantly refining our strategy. And as all the platforms change all the time, we have to sort of adjust accordingly. So the fact that you're doing stuff puts you way ahead of a lot of other people, because a lot of people aren't even doing, because they're afraid of what they're going to put out there. People aren't going to like it. It's going to have a typo. The image isn't going to be right. Like they stop themselves with all of that before they even where. So you're doing. So that's good. Don't be too hard on yourself.
Okay. I usually am. I'm my harshest critic.
We all are, right? I'm here to tell you you're doing a good job. Okay. So when it comes to your social media platform, so here's what I like to do. I like to come up with my categories, and then I like to put. We use ClickUp to manage our stuff, but whatever it can be regular. It's a project management tool. It's not a social media platform. We use it to manage all of our clients, all of our everything. So it's Okay. But whatever it is, so even if I've done it before in a Google Calendar,
Mm-hmm.
right? So what I typically do is the first thing is I'll open up my calendar and I'll go search online and find like, what are all the social holidays or holidays that are happening this month? And I pop those in, the ones that are relevant to something I might want to post for my business. And then I take my categories and I just duplicate those so that now I can see my whole month is covered. So it just depends on how many days a week you're posting. Do you post?
So, go ahead.
No, how often do you post?
I try to post pretty frequently, a few times a day on Instagram, on Facebook, typically once a day, and LinkedIn once a day, every other day. And then I do an article. I've tried to be a little bit more consistent with writing articles every week, just on business stuff.
Okay, cool. I would tell you that you probably don't need to post on Instagram 3 times a day or multiple times a day. You could get away with posting on Instagram once a day. Okay. And then I would post on stories several times a day.
That's what I've been learning. Yes. Story is the way to go.
Yeah.
But posting once and then stories multiple times.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And they don't
What do you think?
Oh, go ahead.
Buffer.
So I don't use a scheduling tool myself. And everybody you talk to has a different opinion on if that hurts or doesn't hurt your reach. Doing is better than not. So if you find a tool that you like that works, Buffer's a great platform. It's all just about what works in your workflow and how you want to manage it.
Yeah, I was thinking I've not used it up until this point, but I did create an account, and I was thinking I can do a blend of both, maybe with quotes or things that I know that will be okay to post at any time. Like being able to just post whatever I'm thinking about or what has come, what has come across my plate that might be useful to share, and it might be just like at random. That's been my. But I want to be more deliberate.
So what I would recommend is whenever these thoughts come into your mind, find a holding spot for them. So if it is Buffer, whatever it is, I like what you say, you want to be a little bit more deliberate. And so those thoughts that come to your mind, you should definitely put those somewhere so you don't lose them. And then just schedule them in, because then what you're doing is creating more content for down the road when you don't have to think about it so much.
Right.
Yeah. So get a calendar, write that down, put all your social holidays in, put all the content categories, because again, what day of the week does your podcast launch?
On Tuesdays.
Okay. So then, every Tuesday, that's easy promo, right? That's going to be just your podcast. Right. So, yes. So then what I do is I like to create a broadcast strategy with my clients. So then you can start to map out, okay, so podcast hits on Tuesday. Then Tuesday, it also goes out to my email list. And then I do a post on all these channels, right? You write it all out. Then on the next day, I post it on LinkedIn. And then the next day, I post like a snippet of the interview or whatever, the topic, as another post with an image on Instagram. And then I talk about it. I share the Spotify link on Insta Stories, right? So you kind of, for all the content you create, you map out all of the different ways that you're going to repurpose it and have that set. So then when you're going in to schedule your content, okay, for every podcast, I need to create a static image. I need to create a video. I need to pull out a snippet of copy of content. I need to write an email. I need to do show notes, whatever it is. Then you have that whole package. And now you've got 6 or 7 days worth of content or posts for just that one podcast. So then you're sharing on your business page on a different day than you're sharing on your podcast page, right? So you have more chances for your audience to find it, grab it, see it,
right,
and consume it.
Right. Okay. So just so I understand, as I'm building this out, the categories are like quotes or tips of news, stories,
Mm-hmm.
and experiences maybe that I've gone through or going through. Those are categories, right, that you're describing.
Yeah, it could be client test. It could be client stuff like, hey, I just went into client X, or maybe you don't even say their name depending on your relationship.
Right.
And we had this huge aha moment about blah, 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 or this is my new favorite product that I love to solve this solution. You know, you're giving them enough to where you become the industry expert where they want to use you. And here's another thing. And this, I just want everybody to hear this. So if you're kind of listening, hear this. We think that if we give away free stuff, they'll never buy from us. They won't hire us to do our services. They won't need us because we're giving them all the free stuff. Don't be afraid to give people information, because here's the thing. If your business owner is 10 employees or less, right, they're strapped. And if you're coming in to help them, they're not going to take all your free stuff and probably do it themselves. Because when it comes down to it, like hearing it and understanding it is part of it, but then actually going out and buying the equipment and executing it is completely different, right?
For sure.
The more you can give people free stuff and empower them to understand what it is that you do, how you do it, and why you're the one that knows the most, the more likely they are going to be to hire you. So like, we teach all sorts of stuff for free. Like I'm giving you guys all social media stuff. Like I will literally walk through episodes on our podcast where we teach you how to build parts of your website. Mm-hmm. But that's because I want you to understand what you're going into when you go into the process, whatever it is. I want you to know what you're doing. So don't be afraid to give information.
So, okay, if we're going back again, with the broadcast strategy, understand the podcast goes out on Tuesday. I'm sharing, I use Headliner.
Perfect.
To do the audiograms. That's been really, really positively received. Mm-hmm. But I just want to make sure I understand as far as, okay, I've got my Instagram, and on Wednesday, let's say following the podcast release, am I also putting something out on Facebook related to the podcast or something else?
So that is totally up to you. So I would map out. So your general posts, your general categories, those are kind of your filler. And then your main content is the main thing that's driving your content is your podcast. So you want to really line out how you're going to be sharing that throughout the week. And then the rest of the stuff you fill in as you need.
I see.
So, we're working on this ourselves, but I typically share everything for my podcast on one day and then we don't share it again. And I'm starting to play with kind of mixing that up a little bit. So sharing some back episodes on Insta stories throughout the week, just to add so that I'm always on Instagram stories, especially if podcasts are related. So for example, today, the podcast episode that's launching is about questions to ask a developer before you sign a contract. So later this week, I might share an older episode that is about, should you build your website yourself or should you have somebody build it for you? So they're related. They make sense to each other. Mm-hmm. So it's not like such a jarring thing, but it gives me the ability to reshare content to people that might be new or people that didn't the last time. So it's really about writing something down on a piece of paper to say, okay, every time I launch a podcast, these are all of the things that I need to do. And then it's just scheduled out. I know every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday after a podcast, these are the pieces that are going out.
Right. And something new that I learned just from myself is that, people do Throwback Thursday. I've been doing Throwback on my podcast. So I'm referencing, although I only have a handful.
Oh, that's great.
I'm doing a throwback just on the few episodes that I've done, just to, new eyeballs, new ears, who are just catching on to my show.
Well, and the sad part is that I think on Facebook, it's like 1%. I don't know what it is on Instagram, but your organic reach is really low. And so by resharing, we tend to feel like, okay, well, we're like our audience is seeing the same thing over and over again, but they're not, because they probably didn't even see your post the first time around.
Right.
So that's great.
Yeah. Just something I picked up along the way. And that's been fun. Just be
Mm-hmm.
able to feel like, oh my gosh, I'm rehashing the same thing. But like you said, it's not you, that audience may not have seen that
Mm-hmm.
before. So.
Yeah. So I want to touch base again on your multiple different pages.
Yes.
I would also say that if your podcast is all, I would maybe some of the content can be the same and just not shared on the same days. So like move them around.
Mm-hmm.
But if your podcast is about empowering women, you're going to attract a different audience with that than you are necessarily with your content on your IT page. Because I think you'll probably be reaching more women business owners, which is totally fine if that's all you want to work with. But if that's not all you want to work with, then I would make sure that the quotes and things that you're sharing on your IT page are not, super
Gender.
fluffy. And I'm not trying to, or like, the fonts that you use, things like that.
That's true.
Yes. So that it doesn't put like, it's just a gender neutral type of situation. Doesn't mean you can't be girly and be you. But I would just think about what you choose, how you choose to caption things and how things go out. I think that would be interesting to test.
I've been really mindful of that because it is very gender neutral. Although I think I might be able to get the most impact by reaching like minority women right out the bat more than just a much broader audience. So, I don't know what you think about that, but like if I see a woman business owner, I'm more inclined to be like, yeah, do it.
Yeah. Well, have you gone to, so I know like here we can go to the library and they can pull stats for us on specific businesses that are registered within the city. So it might be interesting too to go to your library and see if they can pull for you women-led businesses and how many there are, because that might that are of the size that you want, you might be able to get a list. And then you could really see, okay, well, there's only, I would assume there's more than enough in the area, but then you can really kind of start to target those people, not by calling them out on social media. I'm not suggesting you tag them in it or anything, but then you can kind of understand, okay, well, there's a really heavy amount of hair salons that are owned by women in Tampa Bay, or there's a really high level of marketing companies or whatever it might be, right? You can start to see groupings of types of businesses, and that might help you too in tailoring your content and tailoring your tips and your podcast episodes if that's who you're trying to reach. Yes. Then it might be topics that that they're going to be like, oh yeah, that's me.
That is probably the best tidbit that I didn't think of, because here I can get a list of small, locally owned business enterprises from the, and I can look it up online and pull it down and see who they are and maybe follow them on Instagram.
Yeah, exactly. And start commenting on, that's great. Start commenting on their posts and start engaging with them.
Yes.
Yep.
That is fantastic. I didn't even think about that at all. So thank you for leading the way.
Well, and that's why it's important to know who you're trying to reach. Because, for us, we're obviously trying to go out on a national basis. It's a lot harder to kind of hone. Well, it probably wouldn't even be a lot harder to hone in on that specifically. But when you've got a targeted niche and you've got a specific location to really drive home who those people are is impactful.
Yes. That's great.
Yep.
Awesome.
So that's also really important when you're on Instagram. Make sure every single post you do is tagging that location. So if it's a specific area, so let's say in stories, let's say that there's a bunch of, I don't really know how Tampa Bay works, but there's a bunch of people that live in one area. If it has like a different kind of neighborhood name or something, if you tag that location, they're more likely to see your post. So even playing with some of your location tags can help. And then really making sure the hashtags that you're using are also location specific and business specific?
So my latest podcast show is about business stress. And so when I did the hashtags, I found all the hashtags related to small business stress, mental health, mental stress, all those things. What I did not do is, I did not tag Tampa. I did not tag Florida. I didn't do a location tag.
Yeah. That's going to be really important for you, especially because your clients are local.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
There we go. Got it.
You got this. So I think there's just a couple things that you need to do. I mean, you're already doing a lot. And so just by adding a couple of these things, targeting your location and then paying attention to the businesses, like you said, and going in and following them and then helping them using them to help drive the content that will resonate. I mean, just those couple of things. And I think it'll make a big impact.
Yeah. There's some things that seem so obvious. Seems so obvious. I'm learning these things as I go along because when I had my business long ago, Instagram wasn't around. So I'm learning Instagram on the fly. So what you're sharing has really opened my eyes to what else I should be doing that I wasn't, because I didn't know.
You know what? No, we don't know. And it happens all the time. And I'm telling you, staying up on these trends is time consuming. And so, that's what I do for a living. So it's what it'd be the same as, for you, technology you install in somebody's office 3 years ago might not be the same technology that's going to work today. So we're trusting you to stay up on top of trends if you come into my office. So we all have our thing that we do best. And that's why I love podcasts and kind of a lot of these Facebook communities, because we can lean on each other and say, okay, I don't know this. I don't want to know this. Can somebody tell me what to do here?
That's right. That's right.
And all support each other.
Yes, I love it. I love it.
Any other questions that you have about social media or how to kind of integrate your pages together?
I did just have one thing I wanted to mention. I forgot to say that I have a YouTube channel also.
Okay.
And I kind of started that after the fact because I wanted people to kind of see me, not just hear me, but see me talking. So it is leaning more towards my business, but I have mentioned my podcast too. And I didn't know how best to manage that, if I should balance between the two, so that I don't confuse people, to avoid confusion, how best I should use that. Because all along it's been, hey, it's Kellye. I had this client visit, or I went out to this networking event and I'm talking about things.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also have shared, hey, I've got a podcast and it's about this.
So what are you doing, like how-to videos? Are you just doing like video kind of like a vlog style where they're following you along and kind of what it's like to grow your business and all that good stuff?
Yes.
So then I would absolutely share your podcast, but there's so many ways on YouTube. Like if you have your description on point, then you can have your link to your podcast in every single one of your descriptions at the bottom. Like you should have core links so I would keep it there all the time. And then I would just pay attention to what the topic is. So going back to creating lines that make sense. So if you're talking about networking and this networking event you went to, and you have a great podcast episode about how to network like a boss or something, then for sure you can say, hey, if you want more information on this, go check out episode blah, 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 where I talk all about strategies for, taking charge of a networking event.
I see.
If it doesn't make sense to the topic, then then it doesn't make sense to bring it up.
No, that's good. I understand. Because I know just going out, maybe an experience that I went through, maybe I have a podcast about a bad customer service experience. So I can use the YouTube channel, maybe to talk about an experience that I had and then say, hey, oh, by the way, listen to this podcast about my experience.
And then make sure in your description, you've got your description of what the video is. You can always have just the link to your social and your podcast. But if you're calling out a podcast in the episode, then I would make sure you write out like, listen about, or take a listen to my story about a bad customer experience and then link to that specific episode, because YouTube is a search engine. So you don't want to keyword stuff, but the more that you can write out what's in that video or what other information is there, the more likely that those things will get shown, right? I mean, there's more to it than that, but make sure you don't just write like episode 10.
Right.
Like, try to write out what that episode's about before you put the link so that it gives you more of an opportunity for the robots to understand what your video is about.
No, that's great. That's helpful.
Yeah, you got a lot going on, girl.
I know I do. Oh, this is me.
Is it just you?
Yes.
Wow. You need a VA.
I have someone who helps me, not on my social media side. She helps me in business.
Okay.
Yeah, the social media is predominantly me.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, you're doing awesome. So don't stress. I mean, I think you're doing more than most. So, yeah, just make sure you're staying consistent. And if for some reason something falls or drops, then I would test, like, just let that go, you know? Like if your business Facebook page, if you're finding that your stats on that page are not very good, just focus on your podcast. You know, don't overwhelm yourself with all the things. If it's all going well, by all means, keep them going, but give yourself the space to let go of a platform if your audience isn't engaging with you there.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So if I know I don't have a huge audience in Tampa Bay, but if people want to follow along with your podcast or check out your social, what you're doing on social, how can they find you?
Fantastic. Yes. The name of my podcast is called The Business Blend, and it came about just being the blend of business and life elements that intertwine, and my love for coffee. So,
oh, nice.
Business Blend. And then I'm on Facebook and Instagram, and you can email me at kdash at the Business Blend podcast.
Yeah. And we will have all of your links and everything all in the show notes, so you can check that out there. But yeah, it was great chatting with you, Kellye. And I hope you got a couple good little tidbits.
Oh, I got a lot. I've got so much now to do. Thank you, Sammy.
I hope that's a good
for
thing.
my benefit. Absolutely. I'm so thankful. Thank you so much for this. You really opened my eyes on things I didn't even think further about. So I've got some action items for sure.
Yeah, you know, it's hard. I think I'm a solo. Well, I have my brother who's my business partner, but you know, we don't work together during the day, and I'm the strategy person and he just executes. So when you're just sitting by yourself in your office trying to pull things together, sometimes it's amazing what bouncing ideas off somebody can do.
Absolutely. I'm so thankful for that. Yes.
Well, thank you so much. And we'll be following you on social.
Please do. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
I just want to give a huge thank you again to Kellye for joining me and sharing her business struggles with social media and how, you know, she struggles with making all of the pieces of the puzzle fit. I don't think any of us are alone in feeling that it doesn't always make sense how to pull in different areas of our business to reach our audience and grow our business. So a big thank you to Kellye. She was awesome. And I know it was a super fun podcast to record, and hopefully you guys got some good tidbits there as well. I love coming to you every week, so I really hope that you will subscribe wherever you listen to this podcast so that you don't miss out on an episode. We have new episodes that come out every Tuesday, and I thank you for listening and taking time out of what I know is a crazy busy day to get these tips to better your business and to get more sales. I look forward to seeing you next week.